Brenda Trenowden is the global chair of the 30% Club and the head of the Financial Institutions Group at ANZ Bank. She's also an advisor to an independent review into upping the number of women in senior positions at FTSE companies. She's with me now. Good to see you. We can deal quickly with the Australian Prime Minister's. What was it that he said that was so objectionable? Because most women in professions would agree, yeah, we got here our own way, but not just on the back of pushing somebody else down.
Well, I think all the women that I know and work with would certainly say the same thing, and we certainly think it's not a zero-sum game. You know, I didn't hear his whole speech, so I think when you take one sentence out of context, sometimes, you know, things are misinterpreted. So I would agree that we don't want to be pushing other people down to bring people up. We want everybody to be rising up, and we want everyone to benefit from greater inclusion, actually.
And what is the biggest issue bedeviling now women in senior positions, do you believe?
Well, I wish there was just one issue, Richard, then it would be easier to solve, but it's a multivariate problem and therefore requires a multivariate solution. But there are lots of things. So there are definitely unconscious biases. You know, there are stereotypes and norms that everyone has in their heads about what leadership looks like that I think holds women back. You've certainly got lack of sponsorship. You know, you've got culture. I think that the big thing that the 30% Club is focusing on this year is really looking at the inclusion side of the D&I equations. So we've spent a lot of time trying to create a lot more diversity, hire more women or underrepresented candidates, but we haven't spent enough time thinking about how to make culture more inclusive for everyone. And so I think that is part of the biggest issue, is one type of dominant culture.
And yet in the workplace, most companies have a veritable forest of policies, you know, pages on the website, mission statements galore about it, and are still seen to somehow fumble in the final hurdle.
So policies are great, and words on a website are fantastic. But what we say is that, first of all, the leadership of the company, the CEO, has to take this seriously because it's good for their business, and they have to communicate that authentically. They then have to do a diagnostic of where the challenges are in their own company, because every company is different. But I think one of the biggest challenges we see is that all of this has to be implemented by managers. You know, a lot of the problem comes into that middle management layer. And certainly in my experience, companies don't value management the way they used to. They don't train managers as much. And if you think about it, when people have bad experiences and they leave companies, they tend to leave managers. They don't leave companies.
If we take the United States, surely the biggest example of just the difficulty that the issue of the gender issue is taking the idea of maternity leave in the United States, which you'll be aware, of course, is you're lucky if you get a few weeks paid and back to work or you're in trouble. If you have a society that doesn't recognise that only half the population is genetically capable of having the next generation, then it's going to be very difficult to introduce other policies that will facilitate that.
So I think a lot of people think that, you know, maternity leave and having babies is one of the big issues. It's one part of the problem, but it's not the whole problem. And I think...
But I guess what I'm saying is if you don't deal with something as big as that,
it's a critical piece.
You're starting, you know, it's much more difficult to start to deal with the other areas. So
you're right. The US, I think, is far behind in that space. And happily in the UK, a lot of companies are now introducing equal, you know, parent leave for both women and men. And so I think you're right. I think once we see, you know, men taking leave as well and sharing with their wives or with their partners, then, you know, we'll start to see more equality, definitely.
Looking at the results of our poll tonight, it's a, you know, 75% say quotas are not the answer. Would you agree?
We would. The 30% Club is against quotas. We believe that, you know, voluntary business-led targets have a better result. So I'll give you an example. For those of us with children, if you force your children to do things, you don't get the same sustainable result that you do if you talk to them and you convince them to do it because they want to do it.